What does the future hold, and how do you stay ahead? E-Business 2.0 Roadmap for Success offers a clear-eyed look. We will focus on what it says about business and companies. Stay with me, the best part is near the end. Chapter 1: Moving from E-commerce to E-business. What to expect: new economy, new tools, new rules. Few concepts have revolutionized business more profoundly than e-commerce. Simply put, the streamlining of interactions, products, and payments from customers to companies and from companies to suppliers is causing a seismic upheaval in corporate boardrooms. Managers in the new millennium are being forced to re-examine traditional definitions of value, competition, and service. To compete effectively in the e-commerce world, a company must structurally transform its internal foundation. This structural change requires a company to develop an innovative e-business strategy, focusing on speed to market and breakthrough execution. This structural change requires large-scale process changes, focusing on reducing variation and handoffs. At the same time, companies must also develop a potent e-business infrastructure oriented toward continuous service improvement and ceaseless innovation. In this chapter, we'll look at the mechanics of e-business, what it is, its corporate and economic impacts, and how it is radically changing business processes. A core component of successful e-business practice is assessing and redesigning how your firm provides value to its customers. This chapter includes the steps we recommend for disaggregating these components of customer value and reaggregating them into the value chains that support the e-business model. Why can consumers buy a $999 built-to-order PC from Dell online, but not a customized $3,000 color copier from Xerox? Why can you trade stocks and options online through Charles Schwab, but not go online to view or make changes to your senior or Kaiser Health insurance plan? Why does it take only a few minutes to choose a flight, buy an airline ticket, and reserve a hotel room and car through Microsoft Expedia, but twice as long to speak with an American or United travel agent? How can FedEx and UPS make it easy for customers to track their pack ages, create airbills, and schedule pickups on the web, but banks cannot tell their customers the status of online bill payments made to the local phone company? Why is it that Cisco can overhaul its product line every 2 years, but Kodak cannot seem to deliver rapid innovations to meet changing customer requirements? What makes some companies successful in the digital economy? Visionary companies understand that current business designs are insufficient to meet the challenges of doing business in the e-commerce era. If you take a close look at such leading businesses as Intel, Dell, Nokia, Cisco, and GE, you'll find a new business design, one that emphasizes a finely tuned integration of customer needs, technology, and processes. These companies use technology to streamline operations, boost brands, improve customer loyalty, and ultimately, drive profit growth. In today's connected, computerized, and communicating world, visionary firms are setting new rules within their industries via new e-business designs and inter-enterprise processes. These companies have integrated operations to support changing customer requirements, realizing that the e-customer's needs, tastes, and expectations are transforming the shape of the enterprise. The visionary firms also realize that the next wave of customer-centric innovation requires the fusion of business designs, processes, applications, and systems on an unprecedented scale. We call this customer-oriented integration e-business, the organizational foundation needed to support business in the net economy. This forces the management of traditional companies to ask 4 questions. How will e-commerce change our customer priorities? How can we construct a business design to meet these new customer priorities? What kind of new applications infrastructure do we need to orchestrate the new business design? What short-term and long-term investments in people, partners, and technology must we make to survive, let alone thrive, in this new environment? Are you ready? As you look around your company, what problems preoccupy senior management? What are your firm's current priorities? Long-term market share versus short-term profits, revenue growth versus cost reduction. What high-profile projects have either been initiated or recently proposed to accomplish these priorities? In light of these priorities, and the projects intended to achieve them, how do you feel about the digital future? Analyze your company's ability to compete with new entrants that don't have your company's baggage, legacy applications, calcified processes, bureaucratic controls, and inflexible business models. As you continue your analysis, ask yourself questions about your corporate strategy. Does my senior management have a clear understanding of how our industry is being shaped by new and unconventional rivals? Do senior managers suffer from flawed assumptions or blind spots in interpreting industry-level changes? Does senior management see these changes as a threat or as an opportunity? Is senior management willing to make changes to the company business model before it's too late? Is senior management setting the right priorities to be the rule makers rather than rule takers in the e-commerce era? What is your top management's mindset? Is it one of a sprinter or of a long-distance runner in pursuing new technologies? Does senior management think that catching up to today's industry leaders will be easy? If so, beware, the reality is often the reverse. The companies leading today's e-commerce revolution move quickly and stake out significant market positions early. Cisco, for instance, moved in a decade from an obscure company into a market leader. Companies like Cisco make it very difficult and expensive for slow-moving, traditional firms to catch up, much less overtake them. Be brutally honest about your company's readiness to change. Does senior management understand the implementation side of strategy? Do the company leaders know that the entire business platform is being transformed by new technology, a new generation of enterprise applications that tightly integrates internal and external processes? Does senior management understand the risks, challenges, and difficulties in integrating and implementing these complex enterprise applications necessary for an e-business enterprise to operate successfully? Does top management understand what it takes to build inter-enterprise, technology-supported processes, such as supply chain management, that form the backbone of e-business? Thoughtfully answering the preceding questions will help you shape the corporate transformation that occurs with the enterprise-wide implementation of new technology and business processes. In this chapter, our goal is to make the logic of e-business explicit and comprehensible so everyone on your management team can participate in creating the new infrastructure required by e-business. Many enlightened managers are better than one. An understanding of technology and its role in your firm's future must be made accessible to all management, not reserved, as is sometimes the case, for only an anointed few who have managed to penetrate technology's thick fog and hype. Let us help you to begin this educational process and to get started in linking today's business with tomorrow's technology. Linking today's business with tomorrow's technology, it's happening right before our eyes. A vast and rapid reconfiguration of business on an unprecedented scale. Conventional wisdom says that e-commerce is an economic solvent. It dissolves old business models, changes the cost structure, and rearranges links among buyers, sellers, and everyone in between. What is only now becoming clear is that e-commerce is a relationship solvent as well, melting traditional boundaries between companies, partners, and customers, changing the nature of relationships. Simply put, e-commerce is a potent socio-economic chemical that reacts with everything it touches. However, the impact of e-commerce is happening in phases. In its first phase, 1994-1997, e-commerce was about presence, making sure that everybody had a website, meeting the demand that every company, large or small, get out there and have at least something on the internet. People weren't quite sure why they were doing it, but they knew that they had to have an online presence. The second phase, 1997-2000, of e-commerce was about transactions, buying and selling over digital media. The focus in this phase was on order flow and gross revenue. Some of that was the matching of buyers and sellers who never would have found each other in the past. Some of it was simply taking transactions that would have been done through paper purchase orders and saying that this business was done on the internet, although the meaning of that change was quite trivial. But in this phase, the announcements were all about order flow at any cost. Why sell it when you can give it away business models? As a result, many of the first movers in this phase, such as Value America, are either gasping, have gasped their last breath, or are flailing about in a sea of red ink. Today, e-commerce is entering the third phase, 2000, with a focus on how the internet can impact profitability. And profitability is not about increasing gross revenues, but rather increasing gross margins. We call this phase e-business, and it includes all the applications and processes enabling a company to service a business transaction. In addition to encompassing e-commerce, e-business includes both front and back-office applications that form the core engine for modern business. Thus, e-business is not just about e-commerce transactions, or about buying and selling over the web. It's the overall strategy of redefining old business models, with the aid of technology, to maximize customer value and profits. To paraphrase Business Week, forget B2B or B2C, e-business is about P2P path to profitability. One in the first two phases of the internet era, it seemed that the future would belong to upstarts, such as eToys, and that technology would trump experience. Now, it is evident that experience, distribution, and margins are worth something after all. It was inevitable that we would go through these phases. All technologies go through a honeymoon period, and eventually you get down to the bottom line. How is technology really going to affect business? Why is e-business a big deal? CEOs everywhere are faced with shareholder demands for double-digit revenue growth, no matter what the business environment. CEOs have already re-engineered, downsized, and cut costs. Consequently, they are investigating new strategic initiatives to deliver results, and many are looking to technology to transform the business model. In other words, harnessing the power of e-business. What is driving e-business? Every day, more individuals and companies worldwide are linked electronically. This digital binding of consumers and companies in a low-cost way is as significant a technological advance as the invention of the steam engine, electric power generation, telephone, or the assembly line. The resulting democratization of information resulting from this digital revolution casts aside the stodgy old conventions of business built on information asymmetry. 2. The rules of the business game are being rewritten to be the rules of e-business, as listed in. In the pages that follow, we discuss each rule in greater detail. Let's start by looking at the first rule of e-business. Chapter 2, Tip. Technology is no longer an afterthought in forming business strategy, but rather the cause and driver. Technology is no longer the Rodney Dangerfield of business. Technology has made it to the executive floor. Although the effect of technology on business strategy may not be clear initially, it's relentless and cumulative, like the effects of water over time. Technological change comes in waves, and just as the ocean erodes the shore, so too technology erodes strategies, causing business models to behave in ways difficult to predict. Consequently, e-business is not something that conventional, risk-averse businesses can ignore. Indeed, e-commerce poses the most significant challenge to the business model since the advent of computing itself. Although the computer has increased business speed, it hasn't fundamentally altered the business foundation, but e-commerce has. If any entity in the value chain begins doing business electronically, companies up and down the value chain must follow suit, or risk being substituted or excluded from the chain's transactions. Therefore, rethinking and redesigning your company's business model is not merely an option. It's the first step to profiting, even surviving in the e-business information era. 10 Rules of e-business. Rule 1. Technology is no longer an afterthought in forming business strategy, but rather the cause and driver. Rule 2. The ability to streamline the structure of information and to influence and control its flow is a dramatically more powerful and cost-effective service is that of moving and manufacturing physical products. Rule 3. Inability to overthrow the dominant, outdated business design often leads to business failure. Rule 4. Using e-commerce, companies can listen to their customers and become the cheapest, the most familiar, or the best. Rule 5. Don't use technology just to create the product. Use technology to innovate, entertain, and enhance the entire experience surrounding the product, from selecting and ordering to receiving and service. Rule 6. The business design of the future increasingly uses reconfigurable e-business models to best meet customers' needs. Rule 7. The goal of new business designs is for companies to create flexible outsourcing alliances that not only offload costs, but also make customers ecstatic. Rule 8. For urgent e-business projects, it's easy to minimize application infrastructure needs and to focus on the glitzy front-end apps. The oversight can be costly in more ways than one. Rule 9. The ability to plan an e-business infrastructure course swiftly and to implement it ruthlessly are key to success. Ruthless execution is the norm. Rule 10. The tough task for management is to align business strategies, processes, and applications quickly, correctly, and all at once. Strong leadership is imperative. Are executives at large companies aware that the impact of these changes is of seismic proportions? Some are, but most aren't. The majority of executives are too busy dealing with, and reacting to, current operational problems to think of the future. Time is tight, resources are tighter. Those executives who see the future and the coming technological changes, but ignore their magnitude, are likewise at risk. Those executives can't afford to sit around inventing elegant strategies and then try to execute them through a series of flawless decisions. To do so is to fail, dooming their business. In order for executives everywhere to operate successfully in the new age of e-business, business itself must be seen differently. As John Seely Brown, chief scientist of Xerox, puts it, seeing differently means learning to question the framework through which we view and frame competition, competencies, and business models. 3. If the current paradigm is one of reacting to short-term business problems and ignoring the long-term problem of the future, executives must step outside that paradigm, which weaves intricate, best-laid plans based on a skewed view of what the future entails. Maintaining the status quo is not a viable option. Unfortunately, too many companies develop a pathology of reasoning, learning, and attempting to innovate only in their own comfort zones. It's as if management views the coming changes and asks, "What will my new office space look like?" when instead they should ask, "Will the building be standing once the quake passes?" The first step to seeing differently is to understand that e-business is about structural transformation. Defining e-business, structural transformation, if e-commerce innovation is revolutionizing the rules of business, resulting in structural transformation, where do we see the effects? We see them in the growing pace of application innovation, the development of new distribution channels, and the competitive dynamics that continue to baffle even the smartest managers. Are most companies organized to deal with structural change? Not really. Virtually every business today is stretched to the limit, attempting to maintain viability and profitability in the face of unparalleled uncertainty and change. And no relief is in sight. For example, the encyclopedia marketplace has undergone radical change. Thanks to the Internet, Encyclopedia Britannica has been forced to place much of its product on the web for free. Yes, free, a huge step for the tradition-bound company, which hadn't made a change in operation since the mid-1990s, when it put its products on CD-ROMs. Forward as technological innovations permeate more business processes, structural transformation becomes more difficult to manage because the issues of change play out on a much grander scale. Explosive, virginal markets are popping up everywhere as the Internet transforms old industries, financial services, retailing, industrial distribution, and creates new ones: portals, Internet service providers, application service providers. Increasingly, the structural changes are not found just in tangible assets, such as processes and products, but also in intangibles, such as branding, customer relationships, supplier integration, and the flexible aggregation of key information assets. This transition from the tangibles to the intangibles of business value leads to the second rule of e-business. Chapter 3, Tip. The ability to streamline the structure of information and to influence and control its flow is a dramatically more powerful and cost-effective service, is that of moving and manufacturing physical products. The information surrounding a product or service is more important than the product or service itself. This second rule of e-business is the core driver of structural transformation. Unfortunately, few companies have developed the necessary information-centric business designs required to deal with the issues of continuous business change and innovation. Changing the flow of information requires changing not just the product mix, but also, and perhaps more important, the business ecosystem in which companies compete. Managing during a period of structural transformation is difficult. For example, in the 1980s, IBM and Digital Equipment Corporation, December, were positioned to own the PC market, but they did nothing when upstarts Compaq, Dell, and Gateway took the market by storm. Why? Because their commitment and attention were directed elsewhere. Even as late as the early 1990s, DEC's official line was that PCs represented a niche market, with only limited growth potential. December dug itself into a hole from which it was impossible to escape and consequently was acquired by Compaq, a company it could have bought many times over in the 1980s. DEC's management made two significant mistakes. First, in the late 1980s, it didn't proactively transform the business design to rely less on mid-range computers and to focus more on the PC and the coming client-as-server revolution. Second, in the mid-1990s, management was reluctant to fully embrace the Internet as a bet-the-company future trend. Most companies have a terrible time cannibalizing their existing business structures in order to reallocate assets to compete directly with eStart UPS. For instance, if your toys are us, it's difficult to ignore existing assets 1,000 plus retail stores in order to compete directly with eToys. This same challenge is playing out again in industry after industry. The big dilemma facing management today is how to trigger the spark of innovation in the current business models, allowing the firm to compete seriously in the new economy. Unless it develops an explicit strategy to accommodate the structural transformation implied by the e-commerce revolution, an enterprise will find itself scrambling, working harder and faster just to stay afloat and survive. High transformation stakes. Why do successful firms fail? The marketplace is cruel to companies that don't adapt to change. History shows that organizations best positioned to seize the future rarely do. As Alvin Toffler pointed out in Future Shock, either we do not respond at all, or we do not respond quickly or effectively enough to the change occurring around us. He called our paralysis in the face of demanding change future shock. Too often, senior managers fail to anticipate change and become overconfident, or they lack the ability to implement change and fail to manage change successfully. Remember CompuServe and Prodigy. Their stories are another example of market leaders that did not transform quickly enough. Founded in 1969, CompuServe offered thousands of unique content areas to its subscribers, including unmatched business and professional resources, industry-renowned forum areas, the latest in news and information, and searchable databases. Prodigy erupted onto the scene in 1990 as a joint venture of Sears and IBM. At its peak, Prodigy had 2 million subscribers and innovative services that even today would be considered cutting edge. Both Prodigy and CompuServe were superbly positioned to take advantage of the Internet. Unfortunately, both stumbled. They watched as America Online, a nimble, aggressive competitor a fraction of their size, seized the Internet and took away market share. While Prodigy and CompuServe were hamstrung by internal management problems, AOL was carpet bombing the United States with floppy disks. In no time, AOL's management built a powerful brand and out-executed the competition. In 1995, with losses mounting, Sears tried to sell its stake in Prodigy. IBM was willing to buy but thought that the price was too steep. Finally, in 1996, the two companies sold Prodigy to its employees. In 1998, CompuServe was sold by parent H&R Block to AOL. Of the 5 big consumer online services in 1994, 4 were owned by large corporations: Prodigy, Sears and IBM, Delphi News Corporation, Genie General Electric, and CompuServe H&R Block. The 5th, independent AOL, would ultimately beat them all. Online players that have taken on corporate partners, such as CNET with NBC, InfoSeek with Disney, and Excite@Home with AT&T, should learn from history. 5. The cases of CompuServe and Prodigy illustrate the greatest threat companies face: adjusting to non-stop change in order to sustain growth. Continuous change means that organizations must manufacture a healthy discomfort with the status quo, develop the ability to detect emerging trends more quickly than the competition, make rapid decisions, and be agile enough to create new business models. In other words, to thrive, companies must live in a state of perpetual transformation, continuously creating fundamental change, improvement, and innovation. This observation leads us to the 3rd rule of e-business. Chapter 4, Tip: Inability to overthrow the dominant. Outdated business design often leads to business failure. Changes in business design combined with the pressures of time to market and new technology create serious management challenges. In today's environment, the survival of a company depends on its ability to anticipate, gauge, and respond quickly to changing customer demands. If a company's business design is faulty or built on old assumptions, no amount of patchwork will do any good. Standing still and fantasizing about silver bullet solutions results only in heartbreak when none is forthcoming. Working harder and longer using an outdated business model results only in company-wide frustration and fear. Neither approach is realistic for addressing an issue so fundamental to the future of any enterprise. How should a company be designed in order to handle the serious challenges presented by new competitors? Value chain disaggregation and reaggregation. The value of any business is in the needs it serves, not in the products it offers. In this back to the basics philosophy, disaggregation of the value chain allows firms to separate the means, or products, from the ends, or customer needs. Disaggregation requires identifying, valuing, and nurturing the true core of the business, the underlying needs satisfied by the company's products and services. This approach enables managers to disassemble old structures, rethink core capabilities, and identify new forms and sources of value. Intel, with its continual innovation in chip design and manufacturing, is a prime example of the disaggregation and reaggregation strategy. Disaggregation is a crucial tool for industry leaders, such as Intel, because successful organizations may need to abandon old paradigms, systems, strategies, products while these assets possess equity. The foresight to cannibalize a working business design takes courage, because it's risky, but the payoff can be enormous. The objective of reaggregation is to either lower cost or enhance differentiation between a firm and its competitors. Reaggregation by reorienting the business toward a renewed vision of the needs it serves, enables businesses to streamline the entire value chain. Reaggregation also helps create an unparalleled customer experience that satisfies specific needs while offering the customer far more. Customers can find their interactions with a business less sterile, more engaging, and even intriguing as they encounter an array of support, services, and sensitivity never before experienced. Successful reaggregated business designs depend on a well-integrated set of enterprise software applications. These killer apps represent the new technological backbone of the modern corporation and will soon be the standard for companies seeking to compete in the new era. Using technology to reaggregate the value chain is fundamental to the emergence of the digital economy. Reaggregation enables new entrants to compete differently, even though they are competing with the same scope of activities as well-established leaders. Amazon.com, for example, reaggregated the value chain to perform individual activities differently, although it offers the same scope of activities as leader Barnes and Noble. The road ahead. Steps to a new beginning in our work. We've found many firms using strategies of disaggregation and reaggregation to create new business models. Based on this work, we've identified 6 steps that the processes of disaggregation and reaggregation follow with systematic logic. The steps are the same for any business organization, whether a startup, a visionary firm, or a mature company. Each step involves understanding and interpreting a question and its answer to fit your firm's unique circumstance. What is the new industry structure? It's a configuration that challenges traditional definitions of value. What does the digital customer want? Customers want value defined in terms of the whole customer experience and accompanying expectations. What are the new economics? How to convert value creation into revenue? How do you engineer the end-to-end value stream? How do we reorganize our business? We do so by creating the right partnerships. Where is the value? Value is in integration. Value is also in creating a new techno-enterprise foundation supportive of customer needs. How do we implement change? Change is implemented by developing a new generation of leaders who understand how to create the digital future by design and intent, not by accident. Established companies need the most help in transforming themselves to meet the requirements of the new e-business era. To ensure their future success, it is critical for those companies to understand that e-commerce is transitioning from a fringe market phenomenon, dominated by innovators and early adopters, to a fixture of the mainstream market, dominated by pragmatic customers seeking new forms of value. Why is it so difficult for established companies to see the writing on the wall? Primarily because most of them want to stick to the knitting, that is, to continue to do what has made them successful. They don't want to cannibalize existing product lines in which they've succeeded for years. Established companies tend to fall back on the simple formulas of the traditional business models: lower cost, operational efficiency, increased product variety. Technology has historically been viewed as part of the support process, not as the core driver or competency of the business. But as we've seen, technological advances are changing the definition of value. Established firms must learn to take advantage of emerging new technologies to create and provide the new forms of value customers will increasingly demand. Challenging traditional definitions of value. Customers require the companies with which they do business to continuously improve, particularly in the following areas. Speed of service. Service can never be too fast. In the real-time world, a premium is placed on instant, accurate, and adaptive responsiveness to customer needs. Visionary companies embrace the continual need for change and consistently deconstruct and reconstruct their products and processes to provide faster service. Convenience. Customers value the convenience of one-stop shopping. In addition, they want better integration of the order entry, fulfillment, and delivery cycles. In other words, customers demand better integration along the supply chain. Personalization. Customers want firms to treat them as individuals. Little or no choice in the products offered is being replaced. Today's technology gives companies the ability to provide precisely what customers want, made to their specifications. Price. Too affordable is meaningless. Companies that offer unique services for a reasonable price are flourishing, benefiting from a flood of new buyers. In every business, managers should ask how they could use the new technology to create a new value proposition for the customer. This is the key to successful entry into the e-commerce world. Many firms, such as Domino's Pizza, Dell, and Amazon.com, have already succeeded. These visionary companies meet new customer expectations by improving products, cutting prices, and enhancing service quality on a continuous basis. In 1960, Thomas S. Monahan founded Domino's Pizza with a lofty mission. Monahan wanted to be the leader in off-premise pizza convenience to consumers around the world. Domino's owes its success to a few simple precepts. The company offers a limited menu through carryout and delivery, and every pizza is delivered with a total satisfaction guarantee. In other words, customers not completely satisfied with their pizza experience will be given a replacement pizza or a refund. By raising the quality of service and the level of innovation that customers expect, market leaders like Domino's are continually pushing the competitive frontiers into uncharted territories and are driving their slower-moving competitors back to the drawing board. The ability to view the world from the customer's perspective often prevents visionary companies from starting in the wrong place and ending up at the wrong destination. Innovators look for what new things customers value rather than focusing on differences among customers. Often, companies, new and old, rely too much on market segment analysis and forget that segmentation techniques work well only in stable settings. Market segment analyses are difficult to execute in today's turbulent environment, in which the value proposition continually changes. Changing the notion of value, e-commerce in subtle ways. E-commerce is fundamentally changing the customer value proposition. In recent years, technological innovations, such as the web and e-commerce, have accelerated value innovation in the service dimensions of speed, convenience, personalization, and price, thereby substantially changing the underlying value proposition. These technological innovations and resulting new forms of customer value mean that companies must either develop or acquire the talent and competencies on which the value-creating technology depends. What do we mean by value innovation? Faced with similar products, too many options, and lack of time, the customer's natural reaction is to simplify the effort by looking for the cheapest, the most familiar, or the best quality product. Obviously, companies target one of these niches. A product or service that is 98% as good, unfamiliar, or costs 50 cents more is lost in a no man's land against a competitor whose product or service leads in one of these categories. Companies that follow such middle-of-the-road strategies will underperform, leading us to the fourth rule of e-business. Chapter 5, Tip. Using e-commerce, companies can listen to their customers and become the cheapest, the most familiar, or the best. The cheapest isn't synonymous with inferior quality. Today, the cheapest product or service provides a value-oriented format, with many of the inventory and distribution costs taken out or drastically reduced, such as Southwest's no-frills flying and Walmart's everyday low prices. The best example of such a value-oriented format is Walmart, which helped define a revolution in American retailing with its discount superstore format. This format, combined with friendly customer service, superb inventory management, and an entrepreneurial corporate atmosphere, helped the company steamroll competition. Recently, Walmart has taken the cheapest model and applied it to the grocery business. The company is experimenting with 40,000 square foot Walmart neighborhood markets that will compete head-on with grocers. When buying the most familiar, customers know what they are getting. McDonald's is a great example of a familiar brand. Visitors to foreign countries often seek local McDonald's, just because they know what to expect. It took the brand giants of the past, such as McDonald's and Coca-Cola, decades to make their products household names. By contrast, it's taken so-called internet megabrands, such as America Online and Yahoo, only a few years to carve out strong identities using today's superb communications technology. Being the best involves reinventing service processes to enhance quality, being able to turn the company on a dime to move in more profitable directions, and raising relationships with customers and suppliers to unprecedented levels of cooperation and trust. The most obvious example of the best in exceptional service is American Express, exemplified in its return protection plan. This customer benefit refunds card members for items purchased with an Amex card within 90 days from the date of purchase, if the store won't accept returns. Amex will refund the card member's account for the purchase price, up to $300 per item, up to $1,000 per year. By continuously generating innovative improvements to customer service and benefits, Amex retains high customer loyalty. Wherever firms are in the value continuum from cheapest to most familiar to the best, customers want continuous innovation. Bill Gates calls it the "what have you done for me lately" syndrome. Faced with the burden of increasing time pressure and decreasing customer service levels, customers are no longer content with the status quo. They want companies to innovate customer service and benefits, pushing their service to new levels that make the customer's life easier in a specific way. Clearly, companies are caught in the midst of a tornado of increasing customer demands and spiraling business transformation. Learning about value innovation, the book retailing industry, the story of the Internet book retailing war between market leader Barnes and Noble, B&N, and Amazon.com is one of the most written about in recent years. At stake is a significant share of the worldwide book market, estimated to be more than $75 billion, with international sales some 30% of the several players' online business. Given the high stakes, Amazon Com forced entrenched leader B&N, and to a lesser extent Borders, to respond to its challenge. Conventional logic dictated that Amazon.com would be dominated by B&N on the Internet, because of its high name recognition, already advanced fulfillment process, it can leverage its catalog experience, and low prices. In contrast to smaller players, B&N has volume purchase agreements with publishers. One would also assume that online customers fit the same profile as those who shop in stores, that their needs are the same, right? Wrong. The needs and demographics of the online customer are different. In preliminary research, B&N found that online book shoppers buy 5 to 10 times as many books as do traditional book buyers. Online book customers have an interesting profile. They live in remote or international locations. They are interested in incremental price savings, an estimated, all-in, savings of around 15%. They are pressed for time, and they don't mind waiting up to 3 days for delivery. The demographics of online shoppers clearly distinguish what they value from their offline counterparts. 6. Identifying new sources of customer value is an important step, but it's not enough. Firms need to invigorate the complete customer experience. For example, Amazon.com makes the mundane process of comparing, buying, and receiving books interesting, convenient, and easy to use. The ability to streamline the end-to-end experience provides a complete solution to customer needs and sets visionary companies apart. This focus on enhanced customer experience leads to the 5th rule of e-business. Chapter 6, Tip. Don't use technology just to create the product. Use technology to innovate, entertain, and enhance the entire experience surrounding the product, from selecting and ordering to receiving and service. Amazon.com has competed by continuously innovating the customer experience. Amazon.com bundled experience innovation with elements of brand building. Layout and linkages are logical, intuitive, and, just as important, entertaining. To create a satisfying shopping experience, the company created an e-retail infrastructure that meets the needs of customers. For example, titles that are difficult to find, relatively unpopular, or out of print can be traced through a special orders department. When a customer inquires about an out-of-print book, that department contacts suppliers to check availability, and if a copy is located, notifies the customer by email for approval of the price and condition prior to shipping the book. This level of service for a national and international audience is unprecedented in the book retailing business. Amazon.com also provides third-party content, a valuable part of the book purchase process, author interviews and pre-publishing information, which build a sense of urgency and also help cement the relationship with heavy users, bibliophiles, in particular, instant order confirmation, customized search engines, editorial analyses, and carefully managed delivery expectations, which set up the user for a positive surprise. These elements combine to create a rich customer experience and have resulted in a high customer loyalty rate of more than 60%. At this stage, it's too early to declare the winner in the online book wars. At least 200 websites let you buy books, music CDs, and videos. It's fair to say, however, that the winners will need to provide value by finding the most interesting and simple way for customers to use the web. The winners will also provide the best level of service in terms of price, speed, and control. They have to do all this because it's so easy to point and click on the competition's website. As the business environment becomes more digital, established firms need to think like Amazon. Commander. These firms need to assess what they need to do to reset consumer expectations and experiences. Why reset experiences? Traditional customer experiences have temporal and geographic bounds. Customers must go to a specific store at a specific location between certain hours. But the online experience is quite different, largely virtual and non-spatial, and it needs to become familiar, informative, and usable. However, implementing an effective customer experience means more than having an attractive, interactive front end. In the first phase of e-commerce, many firms got carried away by the interactive front end so easily generated on the web. They ignored the importance of the integrated business back end, which drives the enterprise to success. Effective experiences through front-end to back-end integration is the central theme of e-business. What does the Amazon.com example mean for executives? Amazon.com has identified and innovated one component of value user experience to a level of excellence that puts its competitors on the defensive. Amazon's dominance in feature innovation forces competitors to continually play catch-up and to juggle the challenges of their brick-and-mortar enterprises. Jeff Bezos isn't unique. He's following the footsteps of others who took advantage of technology to build giant businesses from scratch. Sam Walton, Bill Gates, Philip Anschutz, and Charles Schwab, to name only a few. The role of the New Age CEO is to help the company understand the threat posed by value migration, the shifting of what customers desire in products and services, and in the experiences involved with these products and services. Some industries will be profoundly affected by this migration, whereas others will feel little impact. It's vital that executives monitor the impact of digitizing processes in their industries. To do that, executives should answer the following questions. Is there an Amazon.com that can squeeze margins in your business? If not, can you create one? Are any new entrants in your industry leveraging the web to rewire the customer experience and change service expectations? Cautious executives need to watch out for a new generation of players attempting to harness the potential efficiencies of the web. Don't take your industry's conditions as a given, as a static environment not subject to change. You must understand that the technological advances can rapidly create conditions in which companies that once were king of the mountain can wake up one day to find no mountain at all. Creating new experiences. The case of Microsoft anticipated changing customer experiences by re-engineering several value chains, including travel, Expedia, automotive sales, CarPoint, real estate, HomeAdvisor, and finance investor. The foundation of these new value chains is the Microsoft Network, MSN, infrastructure. Let's meet these new intermediaries. Expedia provides travelers with a large number of resources and tools, including an interactive travel agent, a fare tracker, a hotel directory with maps, travel reviews and tips, weather information, and even a currency converter. CarPoint provides a wealth of automotive information, such as news, reviews, dealer invoice information, complete model listings, and a dealer locator. Investor is designed to help individual investors research, plan, execute, and monitor their investments. Investor supplies news, commentary, quotes, portfolio tracking, historical information, and market information, as well as direct links to online trading with Charles Schwab, Trade, Fidelity Investments, and Ameritrade. HomeAdvisor facilitates the home buying process by arranging mortgage sales over the web and offering information useful to potential home buyers, including real estate agent referrals, home sale listings, and a property valuation estimator. According to a Microsoft strategy memo, the target markets of these online services are vast. Microsoft plans to win a major share of the sales and distribution charges in the markets for airline tickets, $100 billion, automobile sales, $334 billion, and retail goods, $1 trillion. 7. Expedia illustrates how Microsoft is reshaping the economics of the markets it's entering. Expedia is selling more than $35 million in tickets and travel services every week, making it one of the largest online travel agencies. Expedia has established itself as a travel agency and negotiated deals with American Express and major airlines to sell tickets for a fraction of the standard travel agency commission rate. 8. What is the value provided to the Expedia customer? As mentioned earlier, superior end-to-end integration differentiates winners from those that are second best. Today, travelers find reams of badly organized information that is often difficult to find or time-consuming to gather. Expedia engineered the customer experience by looking at the customer's needs and then working back along the fulfillment chain, changing it based on the customer's requirements. Such an outside-in strategy requires engaging the customer's perspective and reworking inward into the company's capabilities and direction. The Expedia strategy is simple. By focusing on selection, ease of use, and aggressive pricing, Expedia builds customer traffic. Integrated, personalized service keeps customers coming back. However, profits remain elusive. Microsoft is creating an entirely new set of service dynamics in a variety of industries. The company stands as a great example of a market leader that survived a competitive attack from upstart Netscape and came out of the fray leaner, meaner, and stronger. Is there a lesson to be learned from Microsoft about how to manage in a fast-moving environment? Microsoft appears to have mastered the art of driving in turbulent weather. It's not difficult to drive a car fast on a crowded freeway in good weather. You do so without giving it much thought. But the worse the weather and heavier the traffic, the more frequently you have to change direction and speed. Therefore, few of us are capable of driving well at high speeds in inclement weather. Similarly, few companies are capable of thriving in demanding, changing conditions. Engineering the end-to-end value stream, e-business webs as discussed earlier, a company must be capable of engineering the entire end-to-end value stream to ensure future success. This concept is neither radical nor new. Experienced managers know to redefine business designs and processes when implementing new forms of value. What distinguishes re-engineering efforts in the new era is the emergence of more intricate and committed relationships among business entities. As a result, we see the widespread use of synergistic clusters, business ecosystems, coalitions, cooperative networks, or outsourcing to create end-to-end value streams in the new environment. Business webs, BW, 9 does these networks of relationships are known, link businesses, customers, and suppliers to create a unique business organism. This trend leads to the sixth rule of e-business. Chapter 7, Tip. The business design of the future increasingly uses reconfigurable e-business models to best meet customers' needs. For example, Amazon.com, CarPoint, Travelocity, and other e-commerce startups are essentially complex e-business webs built for the sole purpose of organizing and energizing cross-enterprise relationships to create end-to-end value for the customer. Competition is no longer between companies, but between BWs. BW strategists see companies as part of an extended business family that pools the resources and benefits of each company's expertise. BW can play a powerful role in attacking market leaders, and new entrants are using BWs to gain access to resources, customers, technology, and products. BWs are not restricted to just e-commerce startups, but rather are everywhere. Large established companies, too, are moving to the BW model. But the transition is at a slower pace, because BWs are difficult to integrate on a large scale, and coordination among partners can prove troublesome. Therefore, large companies are taking an incremental approach to BW implementation, by first concentrating on creating flexible supplier communities vis supply chain management. The following strategic problem in the automobile retailing industry helps illustrate the challenge posed by e-business webs for car manufacturers worldwide. Buying a new vehicle is the second largest purchase the average consumer makes. Consequently, the new vehicle retailing business is fiercely competitive. A significant number of dealers in the same geographic area compete not only with dealers franchised by other manufacturers, but also with dealers affiliated with the same manufacturer. These factors have fostered industry consolidation, considerably reducing the number of dealerships. Although vehicle purchases attract significant consumer dollars, $534 billion in 1999 sales, the sales process has not changed substantially in the last 25 years. The major source of consumer irritation with car buying is the inconsistency of prices. For example, Bill goes to a dealership and buys a Lexus. As often happens, the price he gets is substantially different from that Beverly gets on the same day at the same dealer. But the presence of the web is changing how automobiles will be purchased in the future. With its interactive capabilities and easy access to automotive information, the web has spawned internet-based vehicle marketing services, such as AutoBuyTel, an online telephone sales intermediary. Using primarily web-based technology, AutoBuyTel has attempted to change car buying and selling. The business proposition is simple. For customers, AutoBuyTel offers a painless, straightforward, money-saving alternative for purchasing and financing cars. For participating auto dealers, AutoBuyTel provides a cost-efficient, volume-enhancing sales system. What does the new purchasing process look like? Customers research free of charge the car they want at Edmunds.com, where they obtain the factory-to-dealer price. The increasing consumer use of the web has encouraged information providers to post automotive information online, and to let consumers do the research. By researching car purchases on Edmunds' site, consumers can quickly determine a fair price for the model they want. They then fill out a form on AutoBuyTel's website, specifying make and model, options, description of the trade-in vehicle if appropriate, need for loan financing, and so forth. Autobytel then forwards the information to a dealer in the purchaser's area. That dealer then offers the shopper a quote on the vehicle. Armed with the accurate information needed to bargain for the best price, trade-in value, and loan interest rate, consumers can cut favorable deals. The information service is free to customers, but dealers pay annual and monthly fees to be marketed by Autobytel and for exclusive territorial rights. Autobytel's business model illustrates the power of the business web. Its model features partnerships with an information site, an insurance company, a warranty company, and a car accessories company. Also, Autobytel makes money from web customer referrals. What does this new trend mean for traditional car companies? Worrisome. In a speech at the National Automobile Dealers Association's annual meeting, Robert Eaton, then Chrysler chairman, urged dealers to acknowledge that the Internet is changing car buying behavior forever by giving car buyers more information and choices. As Eaton said, the customer is going to grab control of the process, and we're all going to salute smartly and do exactly what the customer tells us if we want to stay in business. 11. Eaton's blunt statement succinctly expresses the power of customer-centric buying processes. This change in customer buying behavior is forcing the big three automakers to rethink the future of car dealerships. Today, automakers must ask the following fundamental questions about the nature of customer value, questions that shake the very foundation of their industry. Is online car buying a fad or a new consumer trend? If customers increasingly seek to purchase cars online, what kind of business model is needed to support this process? If the current business model for car dealerships doesn't provide customer value, what will the dealership of the future look like? If customers want to do business online, what kind of e-business applications and technology architecture are needed to support it? How the automobile industry answers these strategic questions will shape the future of dealer networks. The industry stands today as a great example of the rapid evolution of e-commerce from an untested novelty into a mainstream information and transaction channel. If these manufacturers want to continue to control their destiny, they must understand how their industry is being transformed in this new era. As they ponder the e-revolution's implications, automobile leaders are rapidly gaining the insight required for them to shape their future strategy and for determining the skills and competencies needed for building the new value stream. Harvesting the partnerships. E-business core competencies. The e-business environment is one of intricate and dynamic change. New business environments require finding or developing personnel with critical skills required to get the job done. For many organizations, outsourcing their need for core competencies has been the answer. The argument for outsourcing is simple: individual companies cannot do everything well. True enough. In the first generation of outsourcing, the focus was on gaining efficiency and reducing costs, primarily in business processes and support functions, which weren't the company's primary line work. Administration, human resources, accounting, and often IT, information technology, functions were the targets for outsourcing. For example, with the increasing complexity of computers and networks, more firms began outsourcing their technology management. In the 1990s, the biggest beneficiaries of this trend were computer service firms, such as IBM, Andersen Consulting, and EDS. 12 In the first generation, the business's core competence, its line of work, was never outsourced, for the reason that turning it over to outsiders, who didn't understand the firm's customers and their needs, would be extremely risky. In the second generation, the outsourcing boom extends well beyond data center management. In recent years, outsourcing in the form of contract manufacturing has caught on considerably as companies search for ways to cut costs. Examples of contract manufacturing abound in the high-tech industry: Selectron, Flextronics, and SCI Systems. As a result, outsourcing is changing the nature of the relationship between contract manufacturers and the original equipment manufacturers, OEMs. In the past, these two groups danced like detached partners, but now they're dancing cheek. Why? With the shared objective of pleasing customers, the best relationship for both parties is to act as a single company in a truly cooperative and integrated manner. Commitment and above all trust are critical to the success of these relationships. The participating firms must share sensitive design information, link internal application systems, and provide shared services with partners throughout the supply chain. In a growing number of cases, outsourcers finish the product, slap on the logo, and ship it to the user or distributor. It's the wave of the future, and it's happening now. As they face complex business challenges, companies are increasingly farming out critical tasks to cut time to market. In today's world, successfully facing these complex challenges means building trusting, long-term partnerships. It is difficult for businesses today to succeed by going it alone. Increasingly, new e-business entrants use a strategy of GBF, or get big fast. This strategy uses outsourcing alliances as a business model for gaining a stronger market position against a proven industry leader. The experience gained from the successful e-business conversions of recent years has made implementing manufacturing outsourcing alliances less painful, especially if both sides are using similar business application software. This GBF trend makes every market leader vulnerable, but especially distributors, because new online intermediaries can replicate their business model. These distribution startups differentiate themselves in two key ways. 1, they are easy to do business with, which they make a top priority, and 2, they add value through innovative services, such as inventory management. Ease of doing business is critical to their success as costs go down, even if the new entrant does not lower prices. In the third generation, companies outsource in the form of investment partnerships. As traditional brick-and-mortar companies wake up to the impact of the Internet on their industries, they are turning to venture capitalists, VC, for help with funding their online strategies. Staples has taken the VC route to obtain both funding and web acumen for its new e-commerce division. According to Staples Com President Jean Lewis, the major reason for turning to venture capital firms rather than relying on resources from its parent company was access to advice, contacts, and web savvy such firms command. 13. Staples is not the first retailer to launch an e-commerce company outside the mothership. More Fortune 500 companies are aligning with venture capital firms to create standalone web businesses. After 2 homegrown efforts to build a Walmart web presence fizzled, Walmart is spinning out Walmart.com with Excel Partners. In another example, Procter & Gamble, P&G, combined with institutional venture partners, IVP, to invest $50 million in Reflect. Commander. Reflect Com is the first personalized line of beauty products and services created for and available exclusively through the Internet. IVP will invest $15 million for a 15% equity stake in Reflect Com, with P&G retaining a controlling interest. However, Reflect Com will be managed like a startup, on an Internet timetable, and with the possibility of an IPO. 14. This third generation of outsourcing alliances has a variety of names, including the previously mentioned e-business webs, venture keiretsu, clusters, and coalitions. Although successful outsourcing strategies differ widely from industry, all share a common purpose. Each strategy seeks to nullify the advantages of the industry leader by using outsourcing to quickly create a reputation, powerful economies of scale, cumulative learning, and preferred access to suppliers or channels. Amazon Com successfully attacked Barnes and Noble by using this strategy, and Yahoo used it to overtake Microsoft Network in the portal business. Complex outsourcing arrangements are not optional anymore. They represent the only way for companies to fill the voids in their arsenals of talent. However, few guidelines exist for managers to follow when creating new business designs that leverage outsourcing. This brings us to the 7th rule of e-business. Chapter 8, Tip. The goal of new e-business designs is for companies to create flexible alliances that not only offload costs, but also make customers ecstatic. Creating the new techno-enterprise, integrate application integration, is the key to e-business. If a sale comes into the company from its website, the web application must trigger the appropriate responses in the company's sales, accounting, inventory management, and distribution applications. End-to-end process and application integration is not as easy as it sounds. Successful process integration requires a major application overhaul in order to develop an integrated front-end, back-end infrastructure. So far, most firms don't have fully integrated infrastructures, and the resulting process inefficiencies, inaccuracies, and application inflexibility can be seen everywhere. This absence of an integrated application architecture, although not new, becomes more critical with the advent of e-commerce. In the old business model, when customers were given little choice and all competitors were equally bad, a company had incentive to do a better job. In the new e-business era, new entrants are flooding an already competitive marketplace, presenting customers with more choices. As a result, customers are no longer willing to tolerate the inefficient service stemming largely from a company's unwillingness to enhance the quality of its systems and processes. Faced with the threat of losing customers, integrated infrastructure problems rocket to the top of the business agenda. The rise of e-commerce is forcing a redefinition of enterprise architecture. Managers are becoming increasingly aware of the enterprise-wide nature of e-commerce's business requirements. These managers are realizing how short the road is to e-commerce failure if they attempt to apply piecemeal solutions to supply chain process problems encountered by their customers and suppliers. Forward-thinking companies are beginning to understand the enormity of the task ahead and realize that a number of barriers must be eliminated before they are ready to use e-commerce to their competitive advantage. Managers also realize how much more difficult it is to try and turn an old infrastructure around than to build a new one from scratch. This is the transformation paradox. However, A powerful catalyst for e-business is the fact that many firms have reached the limits of automating isolated functional processes. Although these firms have improved cost, quality, speed, and service, differentiation on the basis of these isolated variables is more difficult to come by. To maintain future profitability, these companies must look to the benefits attained from addressing enterprise-wide process improvements, which support increased organizational agility through integrated business applications. 15. From an enterprise perspective, corporate agility is a company's ability to meet the needs of the market without excessive costs, time, organizational disruption, or loss of performance. Is this simply old wine in a new bottle? No. Today's business climate demands that companies live and breathe flexibility, agility, and integration when dealing with customers. For the e-business architecture to succeed, its elements must be aligned with the customer's most important priorities, which include variety, quality, competitive price, and fast delivery. An isolated functional model satisfies none of these needs. Consequently, the love affair with silo-oriented IT infrastructure is being replaced with a new passion: integrated customer-centric models capable of supporting complex business designs. To facilitate change, companies need an effective business design that allows them to take on new strategies. That is the heart of e-business 2.0 roadmap for success. If it helped, a quick subscribe keeps more summaries coming. So how do business and companies connect? That is exactly where we started. Go back to the top and watch it click into place.